Hello friends, welcome back to Data Center Guru Knowledge Platform, knowing A to Z of data center. Since then, I have started preparing this session around 1 month back. I'm really loving this entire activity of consolidating the entire information, structuring into a presentation, recording a session, and sharing with you. Sometimes I also feel blessed that whatever knowledge I have gained across the years together, I'm able to share with the larger masses. And I'm hopeful that you are finding it interesting and getting benefited by it. So today eighth session, which I'm recording and we will be releasing it, data center due diligence. So data center due diligence is a stage which is the first step to the data center lifecycle. Due diligence is the word which is a broader word or activity which is done across the industry for different purposes and different beneficiaries. So similarly in data center also these activities are being conducted for different purpose and at different stages of the data center life cycle. So, based on what stage, what beneficiaries, or what purpose the due diligence is done, there are different types of due diligence. So, each type of due diligence is a bigger subject and cannot be shared in the single session. So, I would be addressing each type in multiple session in the going forward. So in my this slide, I would like to talk about what are the different type of due diligence in the data center which happen at what stage of the data center life cycle. So the first type of found is data center site and location due diligence. So this type of due diligence is done by any customers or any data center operator who would like to build the data center. So before he goes into the design phase, he has to do the due diligence of the site, location, building, etc., where he would like to build the data center. The purpose for doing this activity is to find the conduciveness of that location where you are planning to build the data center. Because whenever you select any location or the site, it has to be conducive because as I said in the beginning of the session on the data center is a closed cell which provide conducive environment to the IT equipments irrespective what happens outside. So what happens outside is not under your control, it is under somebody else's control. So how do we neutralize or mitigate the risk or impact of those things on the data center? That we need to know, and that is what this entire activity is done, so that we find out what are the issues or the risks associated on the data center, what are the services and other part which is available, so that you plan to deal with such challenges which is related with the site and you incorporate those things in the design. So this is activity which is done and outcome of this activity goes to the input side of the design stage. The second stage or type of the due diligence is techno-commercial due diligence. So this is irrespective of what stage of data center is. Whether the data center can be live, data center can be on the construction stage, data center can be as old 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is working. And the purpose for which this particular due diligence is done is some other investor or the party, they want to invest into the data center, or they want to create a JV in the data center or the data center company or associated company or create a merger or acquisition. So whenever such activities are done, The person who is going to invest, he must have a visibility that what is the worth of that data center against which he is investing. To get the complete clarity, this entire due diligence is done. So this due diligence, typically it is also called 360-degree due diligence. It completely consists of, in the first thing I only talk about site. It talks about site, location, the entire data center, their infrastructure, their age, how the entire thing is implemented, what the historical thing, how the entire data center is operated. There are different operational aspects, and the other part is the commercial part, which is associated with the corporate finance, legal compliances, liabilities, and so on and so forth. Then third type of the data center is live, and on a time to time basis people would like to do the health check, because when the data center is live and working for some time, obviously there is always a wear and tear which happen inside the data center, and sometimes you also lose a track in terms of how the entire capacity changes and everything which is happened in the data center. Let us say data center is live for 5 years, so you don't know the current state of the data center. So, lot of organizations, they conduct a data center due diligence on the site. It is also a 360-degree due diligence, technical aspect of it, to find out what are the issues, risks which is associated in the data center, which requires some action. So this is also a part of continuous improvement plan. So if there is any issue in the data center infrastructure or anywhere, you make a plan for the improvement and then you continue the cycle. This activity is also required by a lot of customers where they want to migrate their hardware application or workloads to third party data center. So there, whenever those kind of customers trying to migrate their workload to the third party data center, this is very, very important to know the risk level in the infrastructure and operations of the third party data center, so that they know wherever they are migrating their workloads, it is a safer place and they are well protected and from the risk of outages and also other aspects which is required for data center. So these are the three type of data center due diligence which we have observed, and these are the three purposes. So for purpose, anybody planning to build a data center, the first thing they have to do a site and build location and building related risk assessment. Second, anybody is trying to do the investment in the data center or doing creating any M&A or joint ventures, so they have to do a technical due diligence to evaluate the worth of their data center, and accordingly they can decide the amount of investment or percentage of investment. And the third part is the health check, and any customer who is planning to migrate their data center workloads to third party, they are making themselves confident that we are putting the workloads in safer hands. So in today's session, I would be talking in detail site location due diligence. So, what are the different activities? What are the different things which we do? And what is the actual process which we follow during this due diligence process? So, the first stage, we call it risk assessment. So we need to find out that what are the risks associated on the site which may impact the data center operations. So those different kind of risks are, there can be environmental hazards. Is it falling under earthquake zone? Is it falling under tsunami? Is it falling near tornadoes? Those, what are the environmental hazards where that location falls under? so that you know if such things are there, either you decide to go somewhere else or you create a strategy to deal with it. Second, natural hazards. So natural hazards can be your floods, can be, I said, earthquake also, and man-made hazards. Man-made hazards can be how far is it from railway tracks or heavy moving vehicles or on the path of aeroplane or nearby the aerodrome. So what are the or what kind of industries or buildings which is there in adjoining areas where you have identified the data center building. So what are the man-made related risks or hazards which is there we need to evaluate. Then what kind of security risks which we have got in that location. If something happens, how well you can be able to manage and secure your data center. Because data center is heart of your body, like heart of your organization. So that's the reason we need to have ribs all across, even if it is one. So it helps you live your life to your entire life. So that's it's like data center. We have to see it is protected from all the risks associated. Then, what is the soil quality of soil where you plan to build the data center? It is very, very important because your structural requirement on the data center, the foundation, etc., all relates to your soil quality. Otherwise, your foundation can't be stronger. Similarly, air quality. You need to find out what is the air quality which is available in the surroundings, because quality of air also impacts the technological equipments hardware. It gets corrosionated if the sulfur quantity in your air is high, and so on and so forth. Similarly, if it is existing building, so whether the existing building has got structure, has got all the elements which is conducive to build a data center or data center requirement, whether heights are adequate, whether sufficient spaces are there to put your data center equipments outside. So all the aspects and the risks. So first block I would talk about the risk assessment. So wherever site location which is there, what are the different kind of risk associated with that location, so that either you take a decision or you have a plan to mitigate or minimize those risks. Then second thing is key service availability, because data center also require set of things which is available outside. Without that you cannot build it. Like data center require power, so there has to be ample quantity of power or quality of power available near the data center building or the area, so that when you would like to take the power or scale up your capacity, you don't struggle in getting the power. Point number two, fiber connectivity. Now, fiber connectivity is the key for your workloads to be live, because obviously whatever workload which is running in the data centers are connected to the resources or users outside the data center, because nobody works inside the data center. The real users are all outside. So they have to be well connected through the right size of pipe or bandwidth for the data center, and it has to be also from the different sources, different directions, so that in case of there is one thing fails, there is another alternate thing available always, which enhances the overall reliability of this connectivity for data center, which is very, very crucial. Water source. Water sources are also required, because normally the heat generated by these technological equipments are high, and you require a set of cooling equipments which has to cool it, and for that you also need water source to support this requirement. Obviously there are different kind or different technologies are being used in cooling also, based on which the quantity of water may be plus or minus, but water source is required for data center, it is must. Then emergency services has to be there, like fire services, hospitals, uh, police station, law, and all those kind of emergency services has to be there near the data center building. Skilled resources is a must. Skilled resources and the suppliers or the service partners who has to support the data center across the lifespan 24 by 7. So this is also one of the key thing which is required to be there. Now, then this service availability is the key, which is for the data center. So first step I talked about risk assessment. Second is what are the things which is required to be available near the site. Third is the accessibility part of it. So the size or the building or the location where your data center is, there has to be a clear trucking access so that whatever equipment you want to put it aside during the construction phase, and even after construction is over, you might have to require to carry huge number of equipments to your data center while uh, putting your workloads. So there has to be required trucking access, loading dock, alternative path if there is something disturbance happens in that area. What are the alternative path for the people to reach? Because data center you cannot leave it completely blank or dark, and there has to be enough parking space for the data center requirement. So normally data center doesn't require so many people, but even whatever number of people you need to have, they need to have ample parking space. So next I'm talking about what are the processes involved. So how do you start this due diligence process and where you complete it? So this process is done into three stages. The first is the data collection stage. So you need to have people, skilled resources, tools, and you need to also hire labs and certain subject matter experts to collect the data and analyze the data. So skilled resources, and you also need to get certain documents from different departments, because those documents are not available always in the public domain, so you might have to available to you. Then you do a complete analysis of those data, because unless and until you analyze this data, data is not useful. So after consolidation, you analyze the data for the risk level and also the, I said, availability of the services and the accessibility, etc. And then you document it and record it. Once you analyze the entire data, so based on those risks and the available accessibility and the service availability on the site, you put forward the recommendations what is required to. So in the typically the recommendation part talks about what is required to plug in or mitigate or minimize the risks which is associated with it, and whatever the services available on the site. So all these inputs and recommendations becomes part of your design stage of the data center. So they take care of all those fits and incorporate in their design document. So in the recommendations, as I said, provide recommendation on risk mitigation and minimization, clarity on the open risks. So if there is open risk on the sites which is not able to be mitigated or minimized, then what is the level of risk so that you take the right decision. Because after doing all those activity, if still there are high risks associated on the site, then it is better to not to build the data center on the site and look for alternative site of the location. But if there are risks which is very low level of risk which is there on the site, so you can live with it and still build the data center. If there are risks which you are able to mitigate through the design and implementation phase, well, and there is no problem, we can go ahead with it. So there is no site and location which is 100% perfect and ideal for the data center. And each and every location has got certain pros and cons. And that's how you do this activity and make it conducive for the data center and you build it there. So this is what is all about data center site location related risk assessment, how it is done. And on my upcoming session, which is planned on 19th of March, I would be discussing more about what is involved in techno commercial due diligence. So, same thing I'll be talking in terms of what are the different aspects we look at when we do this particular due diligence and what is the actual processes which we follow to get that outcome and where customer the purpose for which this due diligence is done is met. So, with this, I would like to thank all of you, patience hearing in advance, and I'm really looking forward for you to go through these sessions, not just like it on the social media, because just viewing it and skipping it is not going to help you. If you go through this session, that's the reason I'm not creating this session very long. It is 15-20 minute session which you can be able to go through it, and I really and sincerely look for your feedback for any improvements which is required in these sessions, and I would love to drive those improvements to make you better and better. So with this, thank you very much. Have a great day, great evening, great morning. Take care. Bye bye.